I knew the meeting was going to be a disaster when I saw the bagel spread. It was that sad, corporate assortment of dry pumpernickel and blueberry imitation bagels that look like they've been sitting out since the last fiscal quarter, paired with a tub of cream cheese that had definitely seen warmer days. But the real tell wasn't the stale carbs, it was the smell of the room. It smelled like fear and cheap cologne. Cocktail I've come to recognize over 20 years in IT. We were herded into the main conference room, the visionary suite, because apparently naming rooms after actual functions is too passé for the modern fintech disruptor. I stood in the back, leaning against the server room door frame, my natural habitat. I'm Grace. I don't do synergy, I don't do circle backs, and I certainly don't do whatever the hell was happening at the front of the room. I do security. Specifically, I manage the dark, boring, and terrifyingly important intersection where this private financial firm touches the federal government's money. Enter Caleb Roth, the new VP of Technology. Caleb is what happens when a LinkedIn profile gains sentience and buys a Patagonia vest. He's 32, has teeth white enough to blind a pilot, and speaks exclusively in TED Talk subtitles. He'd been here 3 weeks. In that time, he'd managed to use the phrase paradigm shift 47 times, I counted, and had yet to log into a single administrative console correctly. He tapped the microphone, sending a screech of feedback through the room that made half the engineering team wince. Team, family, rock stars, Caleb started, flashing a smile that didn't reach his dead, shark-like eyes. We're entering a new era, an era of agility. An era of cloud-first, lean-forward, disruptive innovation. Checked my watch. 9:04 a.m. He had 6 minutes before I had to run the daily encryption cycle on the node. To get there, Caleb continued, his voice dropping to that faux somber tone executives use when they're about to ruin lives. We need to trim the fat. We need to shed the legacy weight that's anchoring us to the past. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the HVAC system and the distinct sound of a junior developer hyperventilating. Grace, he said. He didn't look at a piece of paper. He just looked right at me, pointing a finger gun. Actual finger guns in a layoff meeting. You're a legend here, really. But your role, it's redundant. We're moving everything to an automated cloud infrastructure managed by an external vendor. The on-prem hardware is dinosaur tech. Today is your last day. The air left the room. People turned to look at me. I saw pity in the eyes of the older sysadmins, the ones who knew that dinosaur tech was actually a hardened localized server mandated by the Department of Defense. I didn't blink, I didn't cry. I just felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me. It was the same feeling I get when I see a red line in a server log, a problem that needs isolating. Is that so? I asked, my voice flat. It is, Caleb smirked, clearly enjoying the power trip. HR has your packet. Security will escort you out. Oh, and Grace, please leave the company laptop on the table. Asset retention policy. Now, here is the part where most people would scream. They would shout about their 15 years of service, the weekends spent patching zero-day exploits, the holidays missed keeping the network from imploding. I almost did. But then I looked at the laptop in my hand. It wasn't a standard issue Dell. It was a heavy, matte black unit with reinforced ports and a biometric scanner that required a fingerprint and a retinal match to boot the OS. It was one of 3 audit nodes in existence. Caleb, I said, stepping forward, you sure about the hardware? This isn't a standard workstation. Company property, Grace, he snapped, his smile fading into annoyance. Leave it. We'll wipe it and repurpose it for the interns. Repurpose it for the interns. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. He wanted to give a machine containing classified cryptographic keys to a 20-year-old named Braden so he could make TikToks on his lunch break. I walked up to the table. The room was watching the old guard surrender to the new blood. I placed the laptop gently on the mahogany surface. Okay, I said. It's all yours, Caleb. I turned to leave. Hey, hold up a sec, he called out. I stopped. Badge 2. I unclipped my badge, one with the special holographic stripe that allowed entry into the SIF, Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, in the basement, and tossed it next to the laptop. Speaking of tossing things, if you're enjoying witnessing a corporate train wreck in slow motion, go ahead and hit subscribe and give this a like. It helps me pay for the therapy I clearly don't need because I have revenge instead. Thanks, guys. Good luck with the cloud, I said, walking toward the exit. We make our own luck, Caleb replied, already turning his back to me to address the terrified survivors. I walked out of the conference room, down the long hallway lined with inspirational posters that said things like grit and hustle, and into the elevator. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I was in diagnostic mode. Because here's the thing Caleb didn't know, that laptop isn't just a computer. It's a literal piece of federal infrastructure on loan to the firm. It's tracked, it's monitored, and most importantly, it has a sticker on the bottom that he didn't bother to read. As the elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the office I'd built from the ground up, I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed against a small, innocuous-looking USB drive. It wasn't data I'd stolen. I'm not a criminal. It was my personal encryption key backup, something I'm legally required to keep on my person at all times per the terms of my clearance. Without me, and without that key, the audit node on the table wasn't just a brick. It was a time bomb, and Caleb had just decided to sit on it. I walked out into the parking lot. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and I had a feeling that the Department of Defense was going to be very interested in Caleb's asset retention policy. I sat in my car, a practical, paid-off sedan because I'm an adult, and stared at the building. I could see Caleb through the glass walls of the conference room, gesturing wildly, probably explaining how much money he just saved the company. Idiot, I whispered. I started the car. I didn't go home immediately. I drove to a diner 3 towns over, ordered coffee and pie, and sat there for 2 hours just breathing. I needed to let the timestamp solidify. I needed the logs to show a clear gap between my termination and whatever stupid thing he was about to do next. The game had started, and he didn't even know he was playing. My home office is a sanctuary of cable management. There's no dust, there are no tangled wires. There's a tri-monitor setup that hums with the low, steady frequency of a well-oiled machine. It's the antithesis of the chaotic, open-plan nightmare I just left. I sat down in my Herman Miller chair. I won indulgence and exhaled. The adrenaline from the morning was fading, replaced by the dull ache of insult, redundant. The word kept bouncing around my skull. I built that network. I patched it when the Russians poked at it in 2016. I secured it when the crypto miners tried to hijack our servers in 2020. And now, I was redundant because a guy who wears loafers with no socks said so. I opened my personal laptop. Be clear, I did not hack back into the company. I didn't need to. I am the custodian of the Federal Bridge. My status as a contact point for the agency doesn't disappear just because Caleb took my badge. Until the paperwork clears in DC, which takes weeks, I am still the registered keeper of the keys. I logged into the external government portal. It's a drab, gray website that looks like it was designed in 1998, but it has more security layers than the Pentagon. Two-factor authentication, a hardware token, and a password that is 32 characters of gibberish. Access granted. I navigated to the asset status page. There they were, the 3 audit nodes. Node 1, offline safe in the server room. Node 2, offline safe in the backup vault. Node 3, active. My stomach dropped. Node 3 was the laptop I left on the table. It shouldn't be active. It should have gone into sleep mode the moment my biometrics were removed from the immediate vicinity for more than 10 minutes. Unless he forced a hard reboot, I muttered to the empty room. I watched the logs populate in real time. The timestamps were glowing in amber text against the black background. 11:42 a.m., hard reset initiated. 11:45 a.m., BIOS challenge failed. 11:46 a.m., BIOS challenge failed. 11:50 a.m., admin override attempted user, Croth admin. He was trying to brute force a federally encrypted machine using his corporate admin credentials. It was like trying to open a bank vault with a library card. Caleb, you absolute moron, I whispered. I took a sip of water, my eyes glued to the screen. Every failed attempt was being logged not just on the machine, but on the mirrored server at the agency. He was flagging himself. With every incorrect password, he was waving a giant digital flag that said, "Hi, I am unauthorized and I am touching sensitive material." Then the log changed color. Red, 12:05 p.m., perimeter breach alert intrusion detected on port 8080. He wasn't just trying to log in. He had plugged it into the open internet. I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose. The audit nodes are air-gapped devices. They are never, ever supposed to touch the public web. They connect only via a secure, encrypted tunnel. By plugging an Ethernet cable into it, or worse, connecting it to the office Wi-Fi, Caleb had just exposed a classified endpoint to the wild internet. This wasn't a firing offense anymore. This was a federal agents in windbreakers showing up at your house offense. I had a choice. I could call him. I could call the office, get him on the line, and scream at him to unplug it before the automated sweepers found it. I could save his career. I could save the company the massive fine they were about to incur. I reached for my phone. I dialed the main office line. "Thank you for calling," I hung up. "Redundant," I said aloud. "I'm redundant. If I was redundant, then my warnings were redundant too." Instead, I opened a new email window. I typed in the address of my handler at the agency. Let's call him Agent Miller. Miller is a man who has no sense of humor and even less patience for incompetence. Subject: Notice of status change / potential asset compromise Agent Miller, effective 09:00 a.m. today. My employment with company name was terminated. I was ordered to surrender custody of Audit Node 3, serial hash 8892 alpha, to Mr. Caleb Roth, VP of Technology. Despite my verbal warning regarding chain of custody protocols, I am observing erratic activity on the asset beacon. I am no longer on premises and cannot intervene. Please advise. Regards, Grace. I hit send. The beauty of the system is the bureaucracy. I had done my duty. I had reported the separation. I had reported the asset location. Whatever happened next was entirely, 100% on Caleb. I refreshed the log page. 12:15 p.m., directory structure accessed via guest protocol. He had managed to bypass the login screen using a guest account exploit, an old trick that works on consumer Windows but triggers a honeypot mode on these secure machines. The machine lets you think you're in. It shows you folders. It lets you click things. But it's recording every keystroke, every mouse movement, and it's sandboxing you in a digital cage while it traces your location. Caleb thought he had cracked it. I could practically see him high-fiving the other bros in the conference room. "Look at this," he'd say. Grace locked it down, but I got in. "I'm a genius." He was browsing the honeypot files. He was opening folders labeled Confidential Budget and Black Project Alpha. These folders were empty decoys, digital flypaper. But then I saw the metadata tag for a file he uploaded to the machine. File name, Do Pitch Deck Final V2. PPTX size, 45 MB. He wasn't just looking. He was using the classified laptop to store his own presentation. He was treating a government audit node like a USB stick. I leaned back in my chair. The silence of the house felt heavy, charged with static. "You didn't just touch the stove, Caleb," I said, watching the cursor blink. "You just climbed inside the oven." To understand why Caleb is currently dancing on a landmine, you have to understand how I got hired. 7 years ago, this company, let's call them FinCorp, landed a massive contract to process transaction data for a sub-agency of the DoD. It was the kind of money that buys executives second homes in Aspen. But with that money came the clause. The clause stated that FinCorp had to maintain a localized, hardened infrastructure for data validation. No cloud, no Oz, no Google Drive. Just cold, hard steel in a locked room, managed by a custodian with a specific level of security clearance. That's me. I wasn't hired because of my sparkling personality or my ability to pivot tables in Excel. I was hired because I hold a TS/PSI clearance with a polygraph chaser. I am the human requirement for their billion-dollar revenue stream. For the first 5 years, the old CTO, a guy named Marcus, understood this. Marcus was great. He wore cargo shorts and looked like he slept in a server rack, but he respected the hardware. He knew that when I said no, it wasn't a suggestion. It was a law of physics. "Grace is the wall," Marcus used to say. "We don't drill holes in the wall." Then Marcus retired to raise alpacas in Vermont, and the board decided they wanted fresh energy. They wanted a disruptor. Enter Caleb. I remember his first week. He walked into my office, which was actually a converted storage closet next to the server room because I needed to be close to the metal, and wrinkled his nose. "Little dark in here, isn't it?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe, sipping a green juice that cost more than my hourly rate. "Keeps the heat down," I said, not looking up from my monitors. "Right. Listen, Grace, I'm looking at the org chart, and I'm seeing a lot of hardware dependency in your sector. We need to virtualize this. Move it to the lake." "The lake?" I asked, finally turning my chair. "The data lake, the cloud. We need to be agile." "You can't virtualize the audit nodes," I said simply. "They're air-gapped by federal mandate. Clause 4, Section B of the contract." He rolled his eyes. "Everything can be virtualized, Grace. You just need to have the vision for it, you legacy IT types. You're so attached to your boxes. It's cute, really, like collecting vinyl records. Cute." That was the moment. That was the exact second I decided that if this man ever fell off a cliff, I wouldn't be the one throwing him a rope. He saw me as a relic, a middle-aged woman in a cardigan who plugged things in and turned them off and on again. He didn't see the complexity of the encryption I managed. He didn't see the daily attacks I deflected. He didn't see that I was the only reason his email didn't get read by teenagers in basements in generic non-extradition countries. He saw a janitor. Over the next few months, he chipped away at my department. He fired my junior admin, a bright kid named Leo, because Leo refused to install unauthorized monitoring software on the employee network. He cut our budget for spare parts. He started calling the server room the museum. I took it. I kept my head down. I documented every denied request, every policy violation, every sarcastic email. I knew guys like Caleb. They float upward on a bubble of hot air until they hit an altitude where the oxygen runs out. But I never thought he'd be stupid enough to fire the compliance officer. Back in the present, I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen at home. The honeypot on the laptop was active. Caleb was currently exploring a folder I had created a year ago called Project Ghost. It contained absolutely nothing of value, just gigabytes of random noise data that looked like encrypted code. But to a guy like Caleb, it looked like the Holy Grail. I remembered a conversation from 2 weeks ago. Caleb had been bragging about a pitch he was making to a defense contractor, Lockheed, names changed for legal reasons, obviously. He needed a wow factor. He needed to show them that FinCorp wasn't just a bank, it was a tech powerhouse. "I need something sexy," he had said, pacing around my office while I tried to work. "I need to show them we have military-grade analytics." "We don't," I had said. "We process payments. We aren't spies." Not with that attitude, he'd sneered. And now, looking at the logs, seeing that Do Pitch Deck file sitting on the secure drive, I realized what he was doing. He was going to use the audit node, a mysterious black government-stamped laptop, as a prop. He was going to walk into a meeting with a defense contractor, open up a classified government machine, and say, "Look what I built." He wasn't just incompetent, he was suicidal. I felt a strange pang of sadness. Not for him, God no, but for the sheer waste of it. He had a degree from Wharton. He had a jagged jawline. He had a future. He was about to trade it all for a cool PowerPoint presentation. I minimized the log window and opened a fresh document. I titled it Chronology of Compromise. I started typing. Date, October 14th. Event, unauthorized seizure of federal asset. Actor, Caleb Roth. I wasn't writing a diary. I was writing an affidavit because when the dust settled, there would be an inquiry. And I intended to be the one holding the pen, not the one in the handcuffs. There is a saying in my line of work: you can delete the file, but you can't delete the shadow. Metadata is the shadow. It's the story about the data. It tells you who created it, when they touched it, what machine they were on, and how long they stared at it. Caleb thinks that because he has the physical laptop, he has control. He doesn't understand that the laptop is just a terminal. The brain is watching him. I spent the afternoon compiling the dossier. It was tedious work, but satisfying, like popping bubble wrap. Evidence item A, the log of him connecting the laptop to the boardroom Wi-Fi. Evidence item B, the timestamp of him disabling the antivirus, which, unbeknownst to him, only disabled the notification icon, not the actual protection. Evidence item C, the screenshot of him attempting to copy the honeypot files to a thumb drive. That last one was particularly damning. System flagged the USB drive as generic mass storage vendor ID, unrecognized. He was trying to take data off a secure machine onto an insecure stick. That's a Tier 1 violation. That's lose your clearance forever territory. But the cherry on top was the webcam logs. The audit nodes are equipped with security cameras that snap a photo every time there's a failed login or a security flag. Caleb had generated about 40 flags in 3 hours. I opened the image cache. There he was, grainy, black and white, lit by the glow of the screen. In one photo, he was frowning. In another, he was laughing, pointing at the screen while a blurry figure, probably a sycophantic junior manager, looked on. In the third, he was eating a burrito over the keyboard. Crumbs in the keyboard, I noted, typing it into the report. Violation of hygiene protocols for secure hardware. Petty? Maybe. Accurate? Yes. At 3:00 p.m. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Area code 703, Northern Virginia. I picked it up on the first ring. Grace, a voice said. It was dry, raspy, and sounded like it belonged to a man who smoked cigars while reading redacted documents. Agent Miller. Agent Miller, I replied. Did you get my email? We did. We're seeing some unusual telemetry from Node 3. Is the device in your possession? Negative. As stated in my email, I was terminated this morning. The device was confiscated by Caleb Roth, VP of Technology, against my express advisement. There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy pause. He confiscated a node? Miller asked, his voice dropping an octave. Does he have the encryption key? No, he's running a guest session. But he's plugged it into the commercial web, and he's loading proprietary files onto it. I heard the sound of a keyboard clacking on Miller's end. Fast, rhythmic. We're seeing a data packet match, Miller said. He's uploading a presentation. The file header contains keywords, defense, contract, integration. He's pitching to Lockheed tomorrow, I said. He wants to use the laptop as a prop. He's going to demo a live classified node to a third-party vendor. Miller sounded almost impressed by the stupidity. That appears to be the plan. Grace, Miller said, this is a significant breach. Protocol dictates we brick the device remotely immediately. Wait, I said, this was the pivot point. If they bricked it, destroyed it electronically, now Caleb would just say the laptop was broken. He'd blame me for giving him faulty hardware. He'd spin it. He'd survive. If you brick it now, I said, you lose the evidence of intent. He'll claim ignorance. He'll say it was an accident, but if you let him walk into that meeting, if you let him present it, and you have him on espionage and fraud, you have him dead to rights. Silence on the line, I held my breath. I was asking a federal agent to let a security breach continue for the sake of entrapment. It was risky. When is the meeting? Miller asked. Tomorrow, 2:00 p.m., boardroom B, and you have access to his schedule? I built the calendar server, I said. I have access to everything. All right, Miller said, we'll hold fire. But Grace, you're reactivated. Consultant status. Temporary clearance override approved as of. Right now, you are to monitor the asset and ensure no data actually leaves the device. If he tries to email anything out, you kill the connection. Understood, I said. And Grace? Yes, we're going to need a witness on site. Someone to verify chain of custody when we move in. I'm fired, Miller. They won't let me in the building. They won't have a choice, Miller said. I'm sending a team. Ready at 1:00 p.m. tomorrow. The line went dead. I looked at my screen. The employment status field on my HR profile, which I could still see because they hadn't revoked my read-only access to the legacy portal, said terminated. I opened the admin console for my own account. I couldn't change the HR status, but I could update my contact info. I changed my job title from Systems Administrator to External Compliance Auditor. I smiled. The trap was set. Now I just had to watch him walk into it. By 9:00 a.m. the next morning, the FinCorp office was effectively burning down. Not literally, though the server room AC unit was probably struggling, but digitally. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking high-quality coffee, not the office swill, watching the help desk ticketing system. I still had the dashboard mirrored on my tablet. It was a waterfall of red. Ticket hash 4092, CFO cannot access payroll folder. Ticket hash 4093, VPN tunnel to Chicago branch down. Ticket hash 4095, urgent CEO email bouncing. You see, what Caleb didn't understand about legacy junk is that it requires care. The authentication servers run a handshake protocol every morning at 8 o'clock a.m. It requires a manual approval from the lead admin. That's me. I wasn't there to click approve. So the servers assumed the building had been seized by hostiles and went into lockdown mode. I could picture the scene. The sales guys slamming their mice, the traders screaming about lost milliseconds, and Caleb, sweating in his Patagonia vest, trying to explain why the cloud transition was causing the elevators to stop working. Yes, the security badge system was routed through the same auth server, my little design quirk. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah from accounting. Sarah is a good kid. She brings in donuts on Fridays and knows more about the company gossip than the HR director. Grace, oh my God, she whispered. She was clearly hiding in the bathroom. I could hear the echo. Hey Sarah, rough morning? Rough, it's the apocalypse. No one can log in. The printers are printing pages of pure black ink. The coffee machine is displaying an error code I've never seen. Caleb is running around screaming that you sabotaged the system before you left. Predictable, I said, buttering a piece of toast. I didn't sabotage anything. I just wasn't there to turn the key. He's telling everyone it's a logic bomb you planted. He's threatening to sue you. Let him threaten, I said. What's he doing now? He's in the boardroom with his assistants. They're trying to get the presentation ready for the lockhead guys. But Sarah lowered her voice further. He's using that black laptop, the weird one. He says it's the only computer that's stable right now. I laughed. It was perfect. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. The only reason the audit node was working was because it wasn't connected to the company network I'd supposedly sabotaged. It was running on its own independent, government-grade architecture. He was fleeing the burning building and hiding inside the bomb. Sarah, I said, do me a favor. Stay away from boardroom B this afternoon. Why, just trust me, take a long lunch. Go to that salad place you like, okay? Grace, are you coming back? Everyone is saying we need you. I don't think I'll be coming back, Sarah. Not in the way you think. I hung up. On my screen, a new alert popped up from the audit node. 10:30 a.m., external projector connected via HDMI. He was doing a dry run. I clicked on the remote desktop view, a feature strictly for auditing, of course. A window opened showing exactly what was on the laptop screen. It was a PowerPoint slide. The title was Future Warfare, FinCorp's Defense Analytics, and underneath, in bold letters, proprietary technology developed by Caleb Roth. He had pasted his name over the watermark that clearly said property of U.S. Gov. He had literally put a text box over it with a white background to hide it. I took a screenshot. Click, that's fraud, I said. Then he opened a spreadsheet. It was the confidential budget decoy file I'd seen him looking at earlier. He had renamed it Live Transaction Feed. He was going to pretend the random numbers in that file were real-time military transactions. And that's falsifying data, I added. Then, I saw him open his email via the web browser. He was composing a message to the CEO. Subject, the Grace problem James, as suspected, the legacy employee left behind a series of digital traps. This confirms my decision to terminate. I have the situation under control using the new secure hardware I provisioned. The lock head pitch will proceed as planned. We are better off without her. New secure hardware I provisioned, I read aloud. I took another screenshot. Click. You claim procurement of government property, I said. That's? Well, I don't even know the name of that crime, but it sounds like 5 to 10 years. The chaos in the office was just the overture. The symphony was about to start. I went to my closet and pulled out my suit, the charcoal one I wore for federal audits. I brushed off a piece of lint. It was 12:30 p.m. Time to go to work, I said. I pulled into the parking lot of FinCorp at 1:15 p.m. I parked in the visitor section, which felt strange after 10 years of having a reserved spot, but I appreciated the view. From here, I could see the main entrance. 2 black SUVs were already idling at the curb. Chevy Tahoes, tinted windows, government plates, they weren't hiding. This wasn't a covert op. This was a compliance visit. I walked up to the lead vehicle. The window rolled down. Agent Miller looked exactly like he sounded, gray buzz cut, sunglasses, and a suit that cost more than my car but looked like he'd slept in it. Grace, he nodded, get in. I climbed into the back seat. It smelled like leather and serious intent. There was another agent next to me, a younger woman with a tablet. Status? Miller asked. He's in the boardroom, I said. He set up the laptop. He's expecting the lock head reps in 45 minutes. He thinks he's about to close a $50 million deal. And the data? He's loaded a slide deck that claims ownership of the encryption algorithms on the node. He's presenting the hardware as a proprietary prototype. Miller shook his head. I almost don't believe it. I've seen dumb, but this is advanced dumb. It gets better, I said, pulling out my phone. I have a recording from 10 minutes ago. I hadn't mentioned this earlier. I had tapped into the laptop's microphone. It's a feature designed for audit notes, allowing the user to dictate memos. But if you leave the channel open, it just listens. I pressed play. Caleb's voice filled the SUV cabin, tinny but clear. Look, I don't care about the warnings, Caleb was saying, presumably to his assistant. Just put the sticker over the barcode. Yeah, the Intel Inside sticker. Just cover the government tag. They won't look at the bottom. These defense guys are dinosaurs. They just want to see blinking lights. Miller's jaw tightened. The agent next to me tapped furiously on her tablet. Tampering with federal property markers, the female agent muttered. Intent to deceive. He called lockhead dinosaurs, Miller noted dryly. That's going to go over well. So, what's the play? I asked. Do we wait for the Lockheed team to arrive? No, Miller said. We intercept before the third party is involved. We don't want Lockheed seeing our hardware, even if it is in the hands of an idiot. We go in now. We secure the asset. We secure the individual. He's going to make a scene, I warned. He's the VP. He thinks he owns the place. Miller turned to look at me, removing his sunglasses. His eyes were the color of cold steel. Grace, in about 5 minutes, he's going to realize he doesn't even own the shirt on his back. We stepped out of the car. Visual was striking, me in my sharp charcoal suit flanked by 4 federal agents. We walked toward the glass doors of the lobby. The receptionist, a sweet girl named Kelly, looked up. Her eyes went wide. She saw me. She saw the agents. She saw the badges hanging from their necks, badges that didn't say visitor but Federal Bureau of Investigation and Department of Defense. Grace, she squeaked, I thought you were. I'm just here to pick up my laptop, Kelly, I said, smiling gently. Is Caleb in boardroom B? Why, yes, but he said no interruptions. Miller leaned over the desk. He didn't smile. Ma'am, he said, we are the interruption. He flashed his credentials. Kelly nodded, pale as a sheet, and buzzed the door open. We walked through the bullpen. The office was still in chaos from the network outage. People were huddled in groups, complaining, looking at blank screens. As we passed, the noise died down. Heads turned. Wave of silence followed us like a wake behind a boat. They saw Grace, the fired IT lady, walking back in with the cavalry. I caught Sarah's eye across the room. She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with shock and glee. I gave her a nearly imperceptible wink. We reached the double doors of boardroom B. I could hear Caleb's voice inside. He was practicing his speech. And that's why FinCorp is the only partner for the future of warfare. Miller looked at me. After you, I reached out and pushed the doors open. The doors swung open with a heavy thud. Caleb was standing at the head of the table. He had dimmed the lights to make his PowerPoint pop. The room was bathed in the blue glow of the projector. He looked every bit the modern tech executive, sleeves rolled up, hair perfectly gelled, laser pointer in hand. He froze mid-gesture. What the? He squinted against the light coming from the hallway. Grace, what the hell are you doing here? I told security to, then he saw the shapes behind me, 4 silhouettes. Miller stepped into the room and flipped the light switch. The overhead fluorescence flickered on, washing out Caleb's dramatic blue mood lighting and exposing the sweat on his forehead. Who are these people? Caleb demanded, his voice cracking slightly. This is a closed meeting. I have clients arriving in 20 minutes. Get out. He tried to muster his alpha male command voice, and he probably practiced in the mirror. It didn't work, not against these guys. Caleb Roth? Miller asked, stepping forward. He didn't shout. He spoke with the quiet volume of a man who owns the room. Yes, I'm the VP of Technology, and you are trespassing. Special Agent Miller, Duty Inspector General's office. This is Agent Zhang, FBI Cyber Division. Caleb blinked. The laser pointer in his hand shook, dancing a jagged red line across the screen behind him. Duty? Caleb laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. Is this a joke? Did Grace hire strippers? Is this a prank? He looked at me with a sneer. That's pathetic, Grace, even for you, trying to scare me with fake cops. I didn't say anything. I just walked over to the side of the table and set my purse down. I crossed my arms. It's not a prank, Caleb, I said softly. Miller walked around the table. He moved slowly, deliberately. He stopped right in front of Caleb. I have reason to believe you are in possession of classified government hardware, Miller said. Specifically an audit node, serial 8892 alpha. Caleb scoffed. Hardware? You mean the laptop? That's company property. I fired her. He pointed the laser at me and I retained the asset. It's standard procedure. Is it? Miller asked. He looked at the laptop sitting open on the table. It was plugged into the projector. The slide deck was still up, proprietary technology. Miller looked at the screen, then back at Caleb. Mr. Roth, are you claiming ownership of the technology on that screen? Absolutely, Caleb said, puffing his chest out. I developed the integration strategy myself. It's a breakthrough. Miller nodded to Agent Zhang. Zhang tapped her tablet on the record. Suspect claims ownership of classified encryption protocols. Suspect? Caleb's face went red. Now listen here. I know the CEO. I can have your badges, fake or not, revoked. Can't just walk in here and the laptop, Caleb, I interrupted. He looked at me. What? The laptop you're using? The one you said was dinosaur tech yesterday. The one you're using to pitch to Lockheed. It's just a computer. He shouted. It's a tool and it's mine now. Actually, I said it's not. I looked at Miller. Miller nodded. Mr. Roth, Miller said, please step away from the device. No, Caleb said, putting his hand on the lid as if to protect it. This is my presentation. My work is on here. Step away. Miller's hand moved slightly toward his belt. He didn't draw a weapon, but the shift in posture was enough. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. Caleb took his hand off the laptop and took a step back. Fine, fine, look at it, it's just Windows. Miller put on a pair of nitrile gloves. He reached out and unplugged the HDMI cable. The screen behind Caleb went black. The room felt suddenly smaller. Grace, Miller said. Confirm serial number. I walked over. I looked at the barcode on the side. Serial 8892 Alpha confirmed. Check the underside, Miller said. Caleb rolled his eyes. Oh my God, there's nothing on the underside except an Intel sticker. I checked. I looked at Caleb. You checked or you placed? I reached out and grabbed the laptop. It was warm. I could feel the fan spinning, trying to cool the processor that was crunching the massive amount of data Caleb had illegally loaded. Caleb, I said, you really should have read the manual. I flipped the laptop over. There, right in the center of the chassis, was a shiny blue Intel Inside sticker. It looked brand new. It was slightly crooked. See? Caleb smirked. Standard consumer hardware. I looked at him. You bought this sticker from a sheet, didn't you? Amazon, $5 for a pack of 10? I don't know what you're talking about, he lied. But his eyes darted to the door. Miller stepped in. Agent Zhang, if you would. Zhang stepped forward with a small pair of tweezers. With surgical precision, she caught the edge of the Intel sticker. Caleb flinched. She peeled it back slowly. The adhesive gave way with a soft zipping sound. Underneath the cheap blue sticker was a metal plate riveted into the casing. It was red and silver. The text was etched into the metal. Miller leaned in and read it aloud, his voice echoing in the silent room. Property of U.S. Government Department of Defense. He paused. Classified System Level 5 clearance required. He looked at Caleb. Unauthorized access, tampering, or removal is a federal felony punishable by up to 20 years in prison and fines not exceeding $500,000. Silence. Absolute ringing silence. Caleb stared at the plate. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish that had just been pulled onto a boat. That wasn't there before, he stammered. Grace put that there. She's framing me. Miller stood up straight. Mr. Roth, this plate is riveted, and the serial number matches our inventory logs from 3 years ago. Furthermore, we have digital logs of you accessing this device, bypassing security protocols, and uploading unclassified data to a classified drive. We also have audio of you instructing your staff to cover this plate. Caleb slumped against the whiteboard. The marker tray rattled, but I was trying to streamline. You breached the Espionage Act, Miller said casually. You also violated the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and by connecting this device to the open internet, you compromised a federal node. Miller turned to Zhang. Secure the device, bag it. Zhang placed the laptop into a Faraday bag, a silver signal-blocking pouch. She sealed it with yellow tape. Caleb Roth, Miller said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. You are under arrest. No. Caleb whispered, I have a meeting. Lockhead is coming. Lockhead isn't coming, I said. I canceled the meeting from your calendar 10 minutes ago. I told them you had a legal emergency. Caleb looked at me. His eyes were wet. The arrogance was gone. The visionary VP was gone. All that was left was a scared kid in a vest. Grace, he pleaded. Grace, tell them. Tell them I didn't know. I'm not a spy. I'm just trying to do my job. I looked at him. I thought about the redundant comment. I thought about the dinosaur tech. I thought about him firing Leo. Ignorance isn't a defense, Caleb, I said, especially when you put a sticker over the warning label. Miller spun him around. Click, click. You have the right to remain silent, Miller began. I watched them march him out. He was crying now. Actual, ugly sobbing. As they passed me, Miller stopped. Grace, he said, good work. We'll need a debrief statement tomorrow. I'll be there, I said, and, strictly off the record, Miller nodded at the Faraday bag. Nice catch on the Wi-Fi breach. You kept the damage contained. Just doing my job, I said, even if I don't work here anymore. Miller smirked. We'll see about that. They walked Caleb out. I stood alone in the boardroom. The projector was still humming, displaying a blue no-signal screen. I walked over to the table, picked up my badge, which was still sitting where I'd left it yesterday, and put it in my pocket. The aftermath was swift and brutal. When the FBI walks a VP out in cuffs, people tend to notice. By 3:00 p.m., the CEO was in the lobby, pale and shaking, trying to explain to Agent Miller why his company was harboring a national security risk. Miller wasn't interested in explanations. He issued an immediate stop work order on all government contracts held by FinCorp. That's the death knell. That's 60% of their revenue gone in a single signature. I watched from the parking lot. I didn't stick around for the panicked all-hands meeting. I didn't need to hear the CEO talk about unforeseen challenges. 2 days later, I got a call. It wasn't Miller. It was the CEO, James. Grace, he said, his voice dripping with desperate charm. We owe you an apology, a massive one. Caleb was? He was a mistake, a rogue actor. He was your VP, James, I said, sipping tea on my porch. We want you back. Title bump. Salary bump. CIO, we need someone to clean this up. The due says they won't lift the suspension unless a trusted custodian is in charge. I looked out at my garden. It was peaceful. No thanks, James. Grace, please, name your price. Double? Triple? It's not about the money, I said. It's about the culture. You let a guy like Caleb tear down the walls because he used buzzwords you liked. You didn't value the foundation until it cracked. We can change, he pleaded. Maybe, I said, but you'll have to do it with an external auditor. I'm consulting now. My rate is $400 an hour, 4-hour minimum, and I don't do synergy meetings. I hung up. Caleb is currently out on bail awaiting trial. His lawyer is trying to plead incompetence, which, honestly, is the most accurate defense I've ever heard. But the fraud charges regarding the pitch deck, those are sticking. He's looking at federal prison time and permanently banned from working in any industry that touches government data. His career is over. As for FinCorp, they hired my consulting firm. I go in once a week. I wear jeans, I fix the servers, I charge them an obscene amount of money. Yesterday, I walked into the server room. It was quiet. The hum of the fans was steady. I logged into the admin console. I saw Caleb's old account. It was still there. Disabled, frozen in time. I typed one command, delete user /recursive. The system prompted, "Are you sure? This will delete all associated files and history." I didn't hesitate. Enter. User deleted. It was like he never existed. No more disruption. No more paradigm shifts. Just clean, efficient, boring code. I closed the laptop, my own secure, properly labeled laptop, and walked out into the cool autumn air. Moral of the story: if you're going to fire the person who holds the keys to the kingdom, make sure you don't steal the lock on their way out. And for the love of God, always read the sticker on the bottom. We're all healed. If you liked this breakdown of corporate stupidity, maybe hit that upvote. But seriously, check your employment contracts. You never know when you might need to burn the place down. Legally, of course. Real power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it works quietly in the background, unnoticed. Grace's quiet understanding of the system and her cool head brought swift accountability. It's a stark reminder that true authority comes from knowledge, not just position, and disrespecting expertise has steep consequences. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.